Hi, Ron Craig here once again, sharing with you more Bible truth about the way it really is. I want to present a couple of lessons that the modern church desperately needs to know, and the material comes out of both the Old Testament and the New Testament. One lesson out of the Old Testament, the other out of the New. The essence of the message here is that there is no middle ground. I've discovered in my church experiences and observations that most church members obviously believe there is middle ground. You know, they're not real bad, they're not real good, they're not all out for God, but they're not all out for the devil. They're somewhere in the middle, but the Bible allows for no middle ground, and we're going to find out about that in these scriptures. Starting with Deuteronomy 28, 1 through 2. This is a message to Israel, God's covenant people in the Old Testament. And here Moses said, "If you hearken or listen to diligently the voice of the Lord your God, to observe and to do all of his commandments, which I command you today," Moses said, "then all these blessings will come on you and will overtake you." That's the blessing side. And then Moses goes into a long list of them. There are 68 verses in Deuteronomy chapter 28. The first 14 verses talk about the blessings. From verse 15 to the rest of the chapter, it talks about the curses. Starting Deuteronomy 28:15, Moses said, "But if you do not hearken to the voice of the Lord your God in order to obey all of his commandments, which I command you today," Moses said, "then all these curses will come upon you and overtake you." In this chapter, and in these verses, you will not find any middle ground. In fact, I've found throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament, there's no middle ground. We're either on God's side or we're against God. And we're going to look at more scriptures saying that very thing. Deuteronomy again, chapter 30, verse 19. Here, continuing what Moses started in chapter 28, God said, "I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life." No middle ground. It's only life or death, blessing or cursing, no middle ground. And then it's almost as though God was indicating that these people didn't know which one to choose, which one they ought to choose. He said, "Therefore choose life, so that both you and your children may live." Again, there's no middle ground in this passage. Now moving to 1 Samuel 15, verse 3. Here under King Saul, Samuel gave King Saul God's message of what he's supposed to do. He was sending him out to destroy one of the heathen nations, everybody, that had completely come against God and God's people and everything about God, all the truth. And God said, "Go wipe them out." 1 Samuel 15:3. God instructed King Saul, "Go and smite Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not at all, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and donkey." Again, there were to be no survivors, no middle ground. Destroy them all, Moses said. Well, in chapter 15, 1 Samuel, verses 8 and 9, King Saul had done part of what God said. This is very important. He did part of what God said, but not all of it. He was trying to find some kind of middle ground. Chapter 15 of 1 Samuel, verses 8 and 9. King Saul took Agag, the king of the Amalekites. He was supposed to kill him, but he brought him as a prisoner. Took him alive, and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. But Saul and the people spared King Agag, and they spared the best of the sheep and the oxen and lambs, and all that was good in their sight, and did not utterly destroy them. But everything that was vile and refuse in their sight, that they destroyed utterly. They were changing the Word of God, God's instructions. We have no right to do that. And that's where the middle ground people come in. People want to find some kind of middle ground between disobeying God and obeying God, and the Bible does not allow that at all. Well, again, in 1 Samuel 15, verses 13 through 14, now Samuel came out, and King Saul approached Samuel and said, "Blessed be you of the Lord. I have performed the commandment of the Lord." But Samuel said to King Saul, "What means then this bleating of sheep in my ears and the lowing of oxen which I hear?" You were supposed to have destroyed everything, animals, all of it, everything. And now I'm hearing some live animals here that you brought back. 1 Samuel 15, verses 19 through 23. Samuel told King Saul, "You did not obey the voice of the Lord, but you did fly upon the spoil, and you did evil in the sight of the Lord." But then Saul said to Samuel, "Yes, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord." See, he still thought that middle ground was still obeying God. Folks, middle ground is not obeying God. "Yes, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord, and I have gone the way which the Lord sent me, and have brought Agag, the king of Amalek, and utterly destroyed the Amalekites. But the people took the sheep and the oxen, the chief of the things which should have been utterly destroyed, to sacrifice unto the Lord your God." Samuel said, "Has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as he does in obeying the voice of the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifice." Rebellion, which is what King Saul did, is as the sin of witchcraft. And stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. Since you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you from being king. Trying to find middle ground is, in a sense, rejecting the Lord. That's what he said here in 1 Samuel. Moving to Isaiah 1, 19 through 20. Again, no middle ground. "If you are willing and obedient, then you will eat the good of the land. But if you refuse and rebel, you will be devoured by the sword." Where's the middle ground here? You're either very blessed or very cursed, according to the Word of God. Isaiah 50, verse 11. "You who compass yourselves with the sparks which you have kindled, walk in the light of your fire, and in the sparks you have kindled. From my hand you will lie down in sorrow." I'm kind of condensing this. You can read the rest of it on your own, Isaiah 50, verse 11. What he's saying was, "I am the light. I've given you the light of my word, but you have rejected my light, and you have created your own light, sparks, your own torches," one version says. "You who compass yourselves with sparks which you have kindled, making your own light, then go ahead and walk in that. But from my hand you will have torment, lie down in torment. You will not be saved. You will not be blessed, in other words. And if you'll remember, Jesus said, "Take heed that the light which is in you be not darkness." A lot of people try to create their own light, their own truth, replacing the Word of God with what they believe. That's what these Jews did, and it didn't reward them with good. It rewarded them with evil, with the curses, and they forfeited the blessings. Moving to Jeremiah 7:24. "They hearkened not," talking about the Jews, "nor inclined their ear, but they walked in the counsels and in the imagination of their evil heart, and they went backward and not forward." Again, no middle ground, backward or forward. They didn't just stay in one place. This is a truth that the church needs to know. You're not going to stay in one place very long. You know, when you throw like a baseball up in the air, it'll go up until gravity overtakes it, and it stays still for a very split second, and then it starts coming back down. You are not going to stay at the same level you are. You're either going to be growing or moving backwards. They went backward and not forward. Jeremiah 8:9. This is one reason for that. "The wise men are ashamed." The wise men, those are that people look up to. supposed to be wise and telling us what we ought to do. The wise men are ashamed, they are dismayed and taken, for they have rejected the word of the Lord. So what wisdom do they have? What wisdom is in them? If you reject the word of the Lord, what kind of wisdom is left? The devil's lies. There are only two major voices in this world, God's voice and the devil's voice. There are many beings, people, speaking those voices, speaking those words, but they're either speaking the devil's words or God's words, especially when it comes to Bible truth. Finishing off in the Old Testament with Hosea 14:9. The ways of the Lord are right. Didn't say anything else. Any other way is right. The ways of the Lord are right. The righteous walk in the ways of the Lord, but transgressors stumble in them. So where is that middle ground in any of these scriptures that we have covered so far in the Old Testament? And I'm only hitting the highlights. In my study for this, I had several more scriptures. I had to delete some of them because of time and space. And also, I'm sure there are those that I haven't even remembered and thought about. And then there are many more in the New Testament, which we'll go to in the next lesson. Looking forward to seeing you there.